Hello and welcome. My name is Joanna Lee Palacios. I'm part of the Communications 6303 online course. And today I'll be taking you through my little podcast video talking about, brands. And you may be thinking, brands? What kind of brands? Like a product? A product I'm making? Am I creating a product and selling it to you? Am I buying a product? Am I emphasizing a product? No. What I'm talking about is us as people being a product. And you may be thinking, oh, what does that mean? Well, what I mean is we ourselves are a product of a lot of things. We represent ourselves first and foremost, and that makes us our own personal brand. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about what it means to develop a personal brand. So we'll be mentioning identity, language, and communication. These are all things that come together to create our personal brand. We use language to speak it, we communicate it, and then we identify with it. For this podcast, I will be looking a little bit down at my notes because I can't memorize everything, and I'm never had a podcast, so sometimes I don't know whether to look at the camera or to look at myself to make sure I look good. But I'll be looking at my notes as well. So for this podcast, I will be mentioning our textbook, Eisenberg, for some things I might need to describe where these ideas are forming and coming from. So Eisenberg describes language as a way of communicating who we are. And what I mean by that is that we state our values, our principles. We communicate who we are by doing these things. So you may believe one thing, I may believe another thing. You may be a part of one group, I'm a part of a different group. That's what it means to identify to different things and communicate that. So we find that by doing so, we realize we have intersectional associations. That's what I mean. We have different groups for different things, different workplaces, different clubs, different types of things that we do that identify who we are. And so, let's see here. During this podcast, we will be going over how I identify what my personal brand is, what I value, Alvison's 7 imaging, which is the 7 types of categories that people might fall into as a personal brand. I'm going to want to know where I fit in and share that with you. And then also what organizational pressures I face with my brand. We're going to be talking more about work. What are we like at work? So stick with me and we'll keep going on the next few segments. So this podcast will be cutting in and out because I'm also not a very good editor. All right. So why do we need to understand identity? What's the big deal? What's the difference, right? Well, identity is who we are, what we value, and how we navigate the world. So all of these things come together so you figure out how you can navigate and how the world navigates around you. It's actually very important. It's not just how we interact with the world, it's how the world, or more importantly, organizations, interact with us. So, our brand. So I ask you this. Do we change or shift our identities? Think about it. Because we do. However, let's take a step back and think more on what Eisenberg mentions in the textbook. So when we think of identity, we think of who we are, what we like, what we value, all these different types of things, right? So they went about 3 different phases. Phase 1 was the pre-industrial phase. And this was more so when identity was seen more stable. Let me give you an example. So let's say back in the day before industrialization, your great-great-grandfather was a farmer. His grandfather was a farmer. Your dad's a farmer. Guess what? You're a farmer. And you're going to be known as the lifelong farmer. That is what you do. You were born into it. That is your job. You're farmer. That's it. That's your identity. And things changed after that. After we started getting more industrialized, it wasn't that way anymore. Now it was kind of more like your public self your personal self and your private self were not really considered very well. They were very separate. We, in a sense, became numbers. And that sounds really bad to say, but when you're working in the industrialized phase and there's, factories, you're just a number. It is not nice, but it was not very considerate of identities. It was just you're a worker. Whatever you're at home doesn't matter. You're a worker. And while that kind of still feels relatable in some jobs, I'm sure some of you have jobs where you're like, I do feel like just a number. That's not the point. The point is there's a more modern approach now. Now we're saying that identity is socially constructed through language. So we are using language as a tool to communicate who we are, what we value, and what groups we are a part of. So it's more so now that even within workplaces, now that we're, post-industrialized, there's more attention to identity and people who work in these organizations. Me, you. Our textbook does mention two types of identities. There's fixed identity, which means some traits are more inherent or stable, things you can't really change. You're going to be a part of those groups. For example, gender, race, biology. And so these are things that are more hard to not identify when, you're born into them. There's also fluid identities, and this is more unstable. This is more flexible, adaptable. These are, changes. These are values. For example, they can be groups. Maybe just because I work in one place doesn't mean I'm going to work there forever. Just because I'm a farmer right now doesn't mean I'm going to be known as that farmer girl. I could be doing something else. I could be working at a grocery store. I could be a chef. I could be working at a medical center, which I do. My identity isn't very consistent. A lot of things can still change with the fluid aspect. So I could join a book club. I could get into cooking. I could get into traveling more so than the other. I could join a church choir. I could do all kinds of things that are fluid that will help express myself and my identity and navigate the world. But it also matters like what I value, right? So then we're going to jump in to our next topic. Alrighty, so on to the next topic, defining my personal brand. So what's my definition of my personal brand? Or the way I interpret it is a personal brand is the way I express myself, the values that I hold, and how I act, especially around professional settings. So, for example, let me just give you how I am or how I express myself in professional settings. Like I said before, I do work in a medical center. So I tend to be very talkative. I tend to be caring. I engage at work, but more so because a medical center really values being extroverted, being friendly, being caring, especially towards patients. You need to have a certain amount of empathy. You need to have consideration. You need to be approachable. You need to be all of those things. And I will argue that it's hard to balance those things when you also have to be very serious in this profession. So for me, I use humor with patients, but I usually tone it down with leadership. So I try to be very professional. I try to be very, in a way, not too humorous, right? I don't want to be too playful because then I won't be taken as very serious. But then when they observe me with patients, it's better for me to be playful. It's better for me to be not too serious, to make sure I give these patients the care and comfort they need. So it's very interesting that there's an expectation to be extroverted, being approachable, but it's also another expectation to be very serious in the back end of things. So I do find that other employees have a hard time balancing these two things, managing these polar expectations where some people are far too playful, that can get you in trouble, but also far too serious where patients may not like how you come off or they don't like you, which is not a very good thing in a medical center, right? So my personal values, though, on the other side, is that I actually align pretty well with the expectations at work. So I'm already friendly and humorous, and I value those things very much so. I believe in being extroverted. I believe in being playful. I think it's very authentic to myself. And I tend to not take life too seriously. And I don't mean that in a playful, I don't care about life way. I mean that after my father passed away in 2019, I know, I learned a very valuable lesson. I learned that I realized that I had too much worry and too much stress in this world and too much sadness to not enjoy life, to not enjoy what I do. That life is so much bigger. My problems are very small in comparison. So I went back to reevaluating being peppy, being extroverted, using humor. I realized that that was for me a very valuable core principle in who I am and my identity. I'm not this, sad, mopey person all the time, and I shouldn't be. And those are my values. That's how I express myself. And I'll tell you now that I wouldn't say I'm always like this 100% because I'm not perfect. I'm not 100% something. I'm not that fixed. I'm fluid too. But most people who meet me outside or in work will definitely say that I do have that extroverted, humorous demeanor regardless. So while my identity isn't fixed, it definitely is fluid because I'm changing from one thing to another based on expectations. If I had to say what my identity was, if it was fixed, then I would say, well, one, I'm a woman. Two, I'm Latina. Can't really change those two things. Let's see, what else? I can't really change my age, but everybody ages. And the fluid things about me would be, I guess, the groups I'm a part of. I guess like that I work at a medical center, that I am in a book club, that I do believe pretty heavily in social justice, and I join those groups. And what else do I join so many things, and I'm a part of so many different things. So it's one of those where you have to really see where you fit in and how you change in those places and how those places influence where you change everywhere else. I don't bring book club into work because, that's not the right group, but you're kind of getting what I mean, which is why we're going to the next topic here. Okay, so now we'll be getting into Alvison's 7 images of identity. So these are 7 different categories that right now will represent the 7 different types of personal brands that we could all match into. So number 1, the self-doubter. So this is a personal brand or a person who is uncertain and has insecurity. The best way I will use this example is, let's say, as a medical center worker, let's say I'm a scheduler. I keep asking for help and I don't know what to do. I'm uncertain. I don't know if I should schedule this way or I should schedule that way. I don't know. I'm uncertain and I'm always asking for help and I'm never sure and I'm never confident. There's that one. And that could be something that someone brings into work or even in their daily life. Number 2, the struggler, conflict and contradiction. So a different example I'll use is this could be a person that doesn't really has a problem with their values aligning with an organization's values or an external value. Like they're clashing, they don't know. So let's say, for example, I'm a person that really cares about patients so much so that I start to overbook them so they can all be seen sooner. I can't really do that. Let's say that the organization, the clinic says, you can't overbook all these patients. But I believe that everybody needs to be seen, but there's just no room on the schedule. I'm having a conflict with that external organization or that other identity. I'm not aligning. I'm contradicting and I'm conflicting against it. The third type is the surfer. So that is someone who's adaptable but unstable. So this could be, for example, in our medical center, this could be someone who, like me, is afloat. So let's say we float around in different clinics and we help each clinic with what they need to do. We're adaptable. We know exactly how to help each clinic whenever they need our help. However, because we're unstable, we don't really have a concrete way of feeling or identifying. Let's say this person forgets all about our own management team, our own leadership. They're so focused on adapting to the clinic that they're in that they forget that they have their own separate team and leadership. They're adaptable, but they have instability. They're unstable. They're not knowing how to identify. They're going to one place and the other. The fourth is the storyteller. So the storyteller creates a coherent narrative. In the case of work, I'm going to go ahead and say this could be an admin. This could be an HR person at the medical center. They're formulating and being narrative about a story, whether it's to explain our new PTO policy, our new policies involving anything surrounding the organization, anything we may have questions on. There's always an email. There's always a Teams meeting. There's something where one of them is going to be giving us a story and being very extra careful in crafting it. The fifth is a strategist. And what that is you're balancing your authentic self versus your organizational identity or the external identity that you're trying to blend into. So you're one way this way and then one way the other way. So you're trying to blend into both. You're being strategic about how you express your identity in one way or the other. The stencil is number 6. So this is copying dominant discourse. So this is more so by the book kind of person. The way it is, they are usually efficient. Their identity is following in line and doing everything as textbook as possible. And this can fit in any category of any job, I would say. The last is the soldier. And the soldier embraces the organization's identity. And continuing the example, someone in our medical center could be very, very into our medical center. They represent our medical center. They wear hats outside of work that say medical center, and they have medical center shirts, and they have a medical center keychain, and they represent and say how great they are, and they believe in the mission that every patient is important, and they will represent, and believe and identify with the message and embrace what the organization and the medical center says. So after saying all of that, I would say that I identify as a strategist. So I'm the kind of person that I am still true to my authentic self, but I also have an organizational identity that I have to maintain. And I balance those simultaneously at work all the time. So my authentic self is very engaging with the patient, very extroverted, humorous. And I shift in the back end to someone more serious, someone more in charge, someone who cares more about task than, cares more about being efficient than, feelings. I'm one way than the other way, but I'm doing it strategically. I'm making sure that I look good in the expectations that are set for me, but I'm also being my authentic self. And the thing is, it works. It works because my authentic self and organizational identity kind of have a very good balance already because I already am those things. However, I still have to be very careful, and I try to be, which is where being strategic comes into play. Now, next theme. So, how has my personal brand helped me, fit into my organization, cause any tension? So, for me, my personal brand has helped me because I get to have my cake and I get to eat it for now. But that's more so because I'm very good at the expectations and identity I'm supposed to have in a medical center. However, I will note that I still did have to fit in. So, because my authentic self is to be very playful, I also had to learn in the medical center how to be very serious. And that was through emails. I had to learn how to write professional emails without ChatGPT. I had to talk with my supervisor face to face and learn more, I guess, technical professional speak. So I had to do that in the back end. I had to do that, through email technologically, but then out and about with the patients, I had to be, hee hee, haha, and making sure that they received the care that they deserve, right? So it was very new to me to be someone whose authentic self is very extroverted, playful, unserious, to learn how to do the serious part. I have to be serious too, along with my authentic self. So one between the other, and learning how to do that and to fit in, because that's what it was. It was people who were able to balance these two things. And I did more of one than the other until finally I was able to put them together. I will say that I did come across some organizational pressures with my identity, with my personal brand, because, like I said before, I am a strategist, but I had to learn how to be a strategist. But I usually am. I usually mold myself and try to be myself, but at the same time try to be what my organization wants me to be. So there was times where maybe in our team's group chat I was too playful and I said a joke that was a little too unhinged, as one would say. And I would get a message from a supervisor that would say, hey, let's not joke about, that. And I would have to say, okay, my authentic self here can't be full blown. I can't be too playful. I have to be professional. And that's one of the tensions that I had to learn. Not a big tension, not a big display of against my values or any conflict like that. It was more so just conforming and understanding, where the spectrum and where the line is of how, how humorous, how playful, how charming, how extroverted one could be in this job where that's an expectation too. So it was really a lot of that. So we're at the very end, and we're going to have some takeaways and reflections. So what does it mean to develop a personal brand? Well, what it means is it's more so negotiating your self-expression versus the outside expectations or external expectations of that identity expression. So whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's work, whether it's book club, whether it's anything related, it's honestly knowing who you are and knowing how to navigate through all of that. So if I had to give you guys advice, my advice, it would be take a moment to think about who you really are, right? Take a moment to understand what intersectional identities you have. Woman, Latina, Latino, Black, Asian, anything. Find what your identities are, the fixed and the fluid. Know who you are. Take a moment to know who you are and how your self-expressions work. How are you with your friends? How are you at work? How are you in different settings? Once you know more so who you are, what you represent, the organizations or external places and situations that you attend, and how you behave in those and how you represent yourself in those, it'll be easier to navigate through them and or negotiate yourself. Your personal brand is who you are, and how the world sees you, interacts with you, how your work sees you, interacts with you, how pretty much everything else interacts with you, and how you can help manage those things and go through life figuring that out. So it's more so how your personal brand fits right in or doesn't. But who knows? Only you do. And that's going to be the very end of my COM6303 podcast. Thank you for listening. I will practice more on not looking at my notes because I have really bad memory. But if you ever want to see me for another podcast, feel free to like and follow this video. And feel free to follow me or join me on my team project before the end of the semester. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.